Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Hometown Heroes. I'm Mike Kenichi, and I'm excited because I went to school with this person all the way back in 1997 at Connecticut School of Broadcasting, and she's had quite the career. She is currently the senior writer producer of the AMC networks, and she's done some work with ESPN, WWE. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Kerri Kroner. And Kerri, I want to thank you for coming on today.
I'm so happy to be here, and thanks for thinking of me. That's fantastic.
No problem.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too. It's a long time ago, and we'll get into that a little bit. But Kerri, let me ask you this: where did the love for like journalism, broadcasting begin for you? Because I know that like you were very big, around 96, 95, 96, about like maybe getting into news, sports. So where did that love begin for you?
Definitely through sports. I love sports my entire life, and I used to watch Sports Center all the time in college.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be on Sports Center. I wanted to be, one of the anchors. And I think my love of television grew from just watching Sports Center all the time and loving sports so much and knowing I can talk about those things. So that's where it started.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Kerri, because I thought about it. I know you're a big Phillies fan, but I think when I knew you back in the early, late 90s, you were a Yankees fan. So explain to me how you went from the Bronx to Philadelphia. What happened there?
So I've always been a Phillies fan since I was 6 years old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Tug McGraw was. I had a crush on Tug McGraw when I was a kid, and so the Phillies were really good back in the '80s. So he was always on my television, and I
Yeah.
fell in love with the Phillies. My mother grew up in the Bronx, and my grandparents lived in the Bronx, so I would go there a lot. And I would have to say, besides the Dodgers, the Yankees are probably up there with, but the Phillies are absolutely my favorite team. There's no one even close.
Right. And I know, when you were a kid, you got to see some great Phillies, Mike Schmidt, Juan Samuel was very good with the Phillies. And then, of course, Lenny Dykstra, John Kruk, all those guys, Darren Dalton. So, I mean, you got to grow up and see some real outstanding baseball players for the Phillies as well.
Yeah, I mean, my parents used to take us to games when we were younger in Philadelphia at the Vet, and Mike Schmidt was on the team, and Steve Carlton was on the team,
Yeah.
and I loved going to the games. It was amazing, and I remember they took us to one game, and they were playing the Cubs, and I went down the field, and I got to meet a couple of the players and got autographs, and I always like to do that. And I actually met Lenny Dykstra in Milford at a card show, and that was like a thrill
Oh,
for
okay.
me. Yeah, I just, that was such a thrill. He was my favorite back when he was on the Phillies.
Yeah. And I think Phillies fans everywhere owe the Mets management a debt of gratitude because, I mean, that was a steal for you
Yeah.
guys. You get Lenny Dykstra and you give away kind of, I don't want to say an aging Juan Samuel, but he definitely wasn't the same player anymore. So, Lenny Dykstra brought a lot to that team. And,
Yeah,
of course, they won the pennant in 1993. But
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, but let me ask you: did you play sports when you were a kid? Did you play sports in high school? Because it seems like that love of sports would also lead me to believe that you're a pretty good athlete as well.
Yeah, when I was 6, I started playing T-ball, and I went all through the little league. I went, to the farms, the majors. I was the first girl in Milford to play in the major division. Actually, hit a ball over the fence, which was amazing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Off a boy. My parents had us into soccer and basketball, and I really gravitated toward baseball. And in high school, I played basketball, softball, and volleyball. And in college, I played softball. So sports have been a huge part of my life, playing and watching and just being around them.
Right. And let me ask you, you talked about the Phillies players and stuff, but was there a certain one particular baseball player or athlete in general that you really gravitated towards the most when you were a kid?
Um, when I would say more when I would say Derek Jeter is probably somebody who
Right.
is my favorite player, even though I'm a Phillies fan. Growing up in Connecticut and having access to watching the Yankees all the time, Derek Jeter is by far my favorite player of all time because he's just the way he played the game and the way he handled himself. And right now, I love Bryce Harper. That's the guy that
Yeah.
we have him, the Phillies. So I'm really into Bryce Harper right now. He's probably the guy that I like the most.
Right. And, he had a very good first year with the Phillies. I don't really count last year because, 60 games. But let me ask you this, Kerri. When you went to UNH, did you know? I know you went for communications, but did you know back then that, I want to be a broadcaster and or, whatever it is, but you wanted to be in either radio or TV at that point?
Absolutely. I definitely, being in Connecticut and ESPN being in Connecticut, I definitely was hoping one day to end up there. That was like a dream job for me to end up there.
Yeah.
So I did radio. I did play by play at UNH for the men's and women's basketball team. I also did play by play for some baseball games when I didn't have softball games. And I also wrote for the paper that we had there. So I was very involved in both radio and in the newspaper. And I also did work. I took broadcasting. So we had a studio at UNH that I also did work and did some on air and behind the scenes production. And so I always knew that once I hit college, I knew this is what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you, I know we'll get into more of your career, but did you have any aspirations to do like play by play or, do like 20 sports updates or anything like that? Or you didn't care any type of broadcasting you were willing to do?
Yeah. I think my dream was to be on air. And I mean, that was what I was striving toward. And then once, I got the job at ESPN right out of UNH, I started getting into more of the behind the scenes, and I liked the writing and the producing and the,
Right.
More of that creativity than on air. I kind of like still to this day would love to do a play by play or to do, I know baseball so well that I feel like sometimes I wish I had that opportunity to do that, because that would be a dream of mine to do that. Absolutely.
Right. And let me ask you this, whether it would be one inning or just one 9 inning game, if there was one person you could call a broadcast with, who would that be?
Oh, that's Vince Scully.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I say too.
Yeah, he did. I mean, he do games by himself for the Dodgers. Now there's like three or four, like three guys in the booth, and Vince Scully did a game by himself and was so entertaining and so knowledgeable. Yeah, I mean, if I could be with Vince Scully, that would be a dream come true. Absolutely. Good
Right.
question. Good question.
Yeah. So let me ask you, you go to Connecticut School of Broadcast in the summer of 1997. Now, I could only tell you my experience. You might feel different. I felt like I learned a lot about radio, but I didn't really feel like I learned a lot about TV. I don't know if you felt that way, but I mean, did you feel like when you left Connecticut School of Broadcasting, you had a good, good idea or good grasp that you could, you were ready to get a job somewhere at that point?
Yeah, I think also at the time I was working at ESPN, so I was commuting from Bristol all the way to Stratford, and I was getting a lot of. I felt like the work I was doing as a production assistant at ESPN was way more valuable than what we were doing at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I did enjoy, some of the teachers that came in. We did learn a lot about radio and how to work the board, and I think we did some exercises in doing our own shows and kind of commercials and voiceover work, which I thought was really cool. But I think, for the most part, I wish we did more television work. But I do think it was great that we had lifetime use of the studio, which I did take advantage of when I left. I did a demo reel for television. So I'm glad I took the course there. I'm glad I did it.
Right. And, you met some great people there. It was a good group of people. I mentioned to you off air, Jason Edwards, Mark Angeletti. There was a guy, Bruce. He had that particular voice. I can't remember his last name, but he was very cool. John Forth, guys like that, And, you got to work with them. And I even remember we did like a radio show. It was a mock radio show, and it was very good. So, I mean, you learn about what it takes to get in that business. And that part I could never take away from them, because I really learned a lot. But what's interesting too, is when we got out of Connecticut School of Broadcasting, it isn't like it is today, because today you have so much access to stuff that you could send out, film or, DVD, whatever it might be. You had to do like a demo on a reel and stuff. So it was definitely a lot challenging for you when you got out of Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
Yeah, it was a VHS tape. I was sending out VHS tapes back then. So I was going to like local video places and getting like dubs of these tapes to send out in the mail. I remember I sent one to Michael Kay
Oh,
at
wow.
Yankees. I sent him one. I can't remember, but that one stuck out to me because like I would have loved to have been part of the, with the Yankees or any type of baseball in the area. But yeah, then it went to finally when I was handing out, sending reels, it was DVDs. And now it's just a link that I have. Obviously, I have a
Yeah.
LinkedIn page. I have it's so different. It's funny to think that back in
Yeah.
'97, it was VHS.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't know how you felt, but I felt a little overwhelmed because I'm like, wow, this is a lot to try to put together to, send an audition tape somewhere. And now, I mean, the kids don't realize how lucky to have it today because
Yeah.
I think it's a lot easier to get your name out there than it was back in 1997. I'll even go as far as to like 2004. So, they really have a big advantage now than we probably did back then.
Absolutely. It's so funny now when I think about what we had to do back in the day to get reels out and to get people's attention. I mean, I was going to the post office every day and mailing things
Yeah.
out. And now you don't have to do any of that. So I laugh
Yeah. It's
sometimes
something
thinking,
else. Yeah.
yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah. Kerri, one of the things that I saw when you were in the class back then where I really said, she's going to go places is I'll never forget we had to do like a, thing for sports and we had to do like a 2020 update like they do at WFAN or WEEI. And I'll never forget Tino Martinez, I think, had hit his 40th home run and you had done that. And you said he was the first Yankee first baseman in 61 years to do that. And I never knew that. And I was a big Yankee fan, big sports fan. So you always were prepared. You always had the knowledge. And I mean, I could just see right away that, you were really going to do great things. But I mean, your knowledge of sports has always been there since like, I would say you were like 7 or 8 years old, correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I grew up first of all, wow, for remembering things. I mean, I'm super impressed by your memory of our
Thank
time
you.
at Connecticut School of Broadcasting. And I'm very grateful you remember me and you asked me to come on your show. So that's like really cool. I want to get that out there.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah,
I,
this is amazing that you have a show and that you're doing this. This is really cool. And congrats on that.
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, but yeah, sports has been part of my life since I was a kid. My parents love sports, and they always introduced my brother and I to sports and going to games. They took us to Yankees games and Mets games, and my dad was always watching a game. And my mother grew up in the Bronx and told me
Right.
about her dad taking her to Yankee Stadium and watching Mickey Mantle play. So it's sort of like embedded into me in my brain. And I don't think I had a chance to not like sports.
Right.
I don't think I
So let
had
me,
a choice.
right. So let me ask you this. I know you said you were interning at ESPN, but I believe in December of 1999, you got a job at ESPN as like a TV writer, producer. And just talk to me about that, because that's another thing, Kerri. Again, stuff was changing. ESPN was starting to become more like they were doing these different productions that were very important. They were doing these little, bits that were really cool. I can remember the Harold Reynolds one when he was pretending he was on the Bad News Bears.
Yeah.
So just talk to me about going to ESPN in 1999. I mean, right there to me tells me you make it right there because you're on ESPN, the most, recognizable sports station, in the country.
Right. So right, I started in '96 over in Bristol as a temp PA,
Right.
and after 3 years there, I went to New York City and took a job with the promotions department. And so those promos you're talking about with Harold Reynolds, I actually worked with him on Baseball Tonight. When I was in Bristol,
Right.
I worked on Baseball Tonight, and I had the great opportunity to work the '99 World Series, Yankees Braves, sorry.
Right.
And I also worked the '99 All-Star Game, which was at Fenway, which was the all-century team. So everyone was there. Ted Williams was there.
Wow.
It was insane. I mean, so I was
Pete
working.
Rose, I believe, too. Yeah.
Everyone was there. Every great player was all, they were all there. And, I worked with Chris Berman. I remember sitting with him on the roof at Fenway watching the game. I was sitting with Chris Berman watching the game.
Wow.
I worked with every top ESPN guy. Carl Ravage was one of the anchors. And so that was like a thrill of a lifetime to be part of the Baseball Tonight team back in '99. And after that, I ended up going, down the promos path and took a job. There was an opportunity in New York. And so I was there for another 4 years, and I was writing and producing promos. and I was working on part of the This Is Sports Center campaign. My group was working with Wyden and Kennedy, which is a post house in New York City. So that This Is Sports Center campaign is phenomenal. And I think, everyone knows that, all the celebrities and all the athletes that were in those. So I was part of the group that, was doing those types of things. And I remember I was in Bristol for the Pedro Martinez one that they did.
Oh, okay.
So I met a lot of the guys, and I even got some autographs because I collect, sports memorabilia. So I met, Drew Bledsoe was in one, I remember, and Vander Holyfield.
Okay.
Yeah, so I met a lot of the guys, but it was really cool working in Manhattan, in promos, which is, what I'm doing now at a higher level. But being with ESPN for 7 years was amazing, and it's the best learning ground, to ever. And I was working with all of the guys, Keith Olbermann, Dan Patrick. I mean,
oh man,
every day. Stuart Scott was a very close friend of mine.
Yeah.
He was so good to me. He kind of took me under his wing. Wonderful man. So glad I knew him. But
the thing is I've never heard anybody say a negative thing about him. That anybody you talk to just said he was, true gentleman. And I mean, he was a great guy. I didn't know him, but you could just tell that, he really enjoyed people.
Yeah, I knew him. I spent time with him. The nicest, coolest guy, always looking to help if you needed anything. He was always there to help. Easy to talk to. Just the best of the best. And, I remember I got my parents tickets to the ESPY Awards in Las Vegas. And my dad told me when he was there, he saw Stuart, and he knew that Stuart and I had a nice relationship. And my dad yelled, Stuart, Stuart. And Stuart came over and talked to my dad and my mom and introduced my parents to his wife at the time. My dad also got him a tie because my dad worked he was a salesman in a men's store. And my dad bought Stuart a tie, and Stuart wore it on air and thanked my dad.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah, Stuart was just, he was the guy, I would say the anchor that I was closest with as far as, talking to you day to day. And he got Roger Clemens actually to sign a baseball for me. I have it. I wish I knew that we were going to get into this because I would get the ball. But yeah, he had Roger Clemens sign a ball to Kerri on my back. Yeah, because Roger Clemens was in the studio doing a This Is Sports Center commercial. So, Stuart Scott was the best.
Right. And, Kerri, it's funny you bring up Roger Clemens because you talked about working that 99 World Series. And, I remember he kind of not really, Yankee fans weren't really happy with him. They liked David Wells. And I'll never forget that Game 4 night when he pitched against the Braves. And I mean, the crowd was electric that night and they were cheering him on. And for that one night, everything felt right. He felt like a Yankee. But I mean, you probably got to be up close with all of that, and see all of that. And his kids taking that all in, that probably had to be something really cool to see as well.
Yeah, that was a great series. And the only thing that I didn't appreciate was sweep. They swept them.
Yeah.
The series I remember started in Atlanta. And as I was excited we got to travel to Atlanta. Yeah. And I was hoping for a good series, maybe 7 games. But it was quick. It was it was just quick. It was 2-3. I mean, it was 2-2, a sweep. And, Clemens I remember Clemens after the game, and I was on the field. I was just everywhere. I mean, I had the press credentials and everything. And Clemens was on top of the dugout after they swept.
Yeah.
And he was slapping hands with everybody and the fans on top of the dugout.
Yeah.
And I remember he had a shirt hanging out of his back.
They grabbed it.
It. Someone grabbed his shirt.
Yeah.
He was on top of the world. I just remember him being so psyched up when he was on the dugout. And then I remember also, I was trying to get Derek Jeter's autograph. I love Derek Jeter. And I ended up, he came down with Jorge Posada because I was by the locker room, by the clubhouse, and he signed a baseball for me, which I treasure.
Yep.
And then I got the ball. Actually, I was on the field for batting practice, and I got an actual ball that he signed for me. And that is my prized possession. Is my Derek Jeter. Yeah, so that was cool.
Yeah, and he always played the game with class. I mean, he never was the type of guy that was took himself too seriously, and he was a great teammate. And it's not surprising that a lot of people love him because, I mean, he really played the game the way it was supposed to be played.
I agree 100%. He's being inducted in like 2 weeks in Town because they, had to push it back because of the pandemic. But if anyone played the game right, it was him. And he's a model for, I think, anybody who wants to play baseball. He's a great role model for anybody.
And absolutely.
I wish he was a Philly, and then my God, I'd be front row at the Hall of Fame induction. Watching him.
Right. Now, let me ask you this too, Kerri. You brought up the This Is Sports Center and stuff, Stuart Scott. And one of the best commercials I thought ESPN ever did was when they were advertising the fleece. And they were saying, they were pretending that Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann were making calls, wanting the fleece, and they were all excited. I mean, were you able to take part in any of that? Like, were you able to be behind the scenes with that commercial at all? Because that was one of their best commercials ever.
Yeah, not with that specific commercial. I was not, but like I said, I was involved with a lot of the other ones. But yeah, not that one. They were so funny. I mean, those back then were the hottest thing. People just couldn't stop talking about them, and all the anchors were involved, like you said, Olbermann and Patrick, and Rich Eisen, who's now with the NFL Network.
Yeah,
I worked with Rich Eisen when he first started at ESPN. Him and Stuart did the 2 a.m. show. And the overnight show. And so I worked with both of them, and real nice guys. I mean, really down to earth. And I would, I was doing highlights at the time. So I would cut a highlight with an editor. I'd watch a game. They give me a game. I'd log the game with a pen and paper.
Yeah.
And then I would have to make a 30 to 45 second highlight, depending on how important the game was. And then we'd go over it with them. We'd give them a tape. They'd stick the tape in the deck, and they'd have a shot sheet that I'd handwrite. And then, you'd stand there with them, and they would read your shot sheet with your highlight, and they'd say thank you. And then, and then there were even times where I had to run during a live show because, let's say my game was running late. I'd run on set in the commercial break, and I would give them the shot sheet. I had no time to really explain. Sometimes they'd be like, all right, what's going on? And I mean, it was like incredible. I was on the set with them, just handing them a shot sheet and praying that I didn't do anything wrong, didn't spell anything wrong, didn't give any wrong stats or anything.
Right.
Because that would be the end. You would just, because you wanted to make them look good, and you didn't want to make any mistakes for them. But
yeah,
it was fast-paced environment, very fast-paced environment. And, things would come down to the wire all the time. So it was just this crazy environment.
Right. And, that's the thing, Kerri, that a lot of people, I think they understand it more now than they did maybe 20 years ago. But it's like in football, the running back, the receivers, the quarterback, they get all the credit. But the linemen really open all the holes. They do all the work. And then, the on-air guys are going to always get the credit. That's just the way it is. But people don't realize the people behind the scenes play just as big a role because they are making all that stuff happen. They are making – those guys are good, don't get me wrong, but they're making them look good too by having the proper information, getting the bits out, the cuts out, and everything's timed right. I mean, it's a whole – it's like they say, one person doesn't, make it happen. It takes everybody to make it happen. So – people don't realize just how invaluable people like you and everybody else who's behind the scenes, what they do.
Yeah, it takes a village. I mean, definitely. And it's funny because you just see the anchors or whoever it is in front of the camera, but the screaming and yelling that goes on in the control room, because it's live television. Live television is its own, it's a beast. And, because you can't edit it, and it's like, it's going on. And yeah, I just remember a lot of screaming and yelling and just like sweating because of all the running. I'd run down hallways to get to the control room to get a tape to somebody. I mean, it was wild. It was really wild. And I can't even believe we'd even get shows done because of how much goes into it behind the scenes that people do not see.
Right. And the thing is too, with the type of job you do, whether you work in the daytime or you do overnights or you do middays or the evening, whatever it is, even if this show starts, say Sports Center starts at 6 o'clock in the evening, you got to be there 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, it's not really like, okay, my show starts at 6, so I'll get there at 5:15. It doesn't work that way. You really have to prepare a lot. So your days are very long. I know it's exciting and it's enjoyable, but there are times where, I'm sure it's stressful as well.
Yeah, when I first started, I got the 6 p.m. to 3 in the morning shift. I worked on, I worked on the 2 a.m. Sports Center, and I got in at 6. And then we would settle in and we'd have, a production meeting where we go over the rundown and the things that were going on, whether it was games or mostly it was highlights at that time. The 2 o'clock was more highlights as opposed to the 6 was more of a news show. And I worked on that. And when I worked on the 6 o'clock Sports Center, I'd get in at 10 in the morning and I'd work 10 to 7. But for the most part, when I first started, I was on the 2 a.m. Sports Center and I was working 6 to 3 in the morning. And that was rough. I mean,
right.
Thank God I was like 21 at the time and I had energy and I was like so excited to be working for ESPN. It didn't matter what time it was, but it gets to you after 3 years. You're just, it's a lot. It just takes its toll on you, really.
Yeah. And let me ask you, they had told us at CSB, especially with radio, they would always tell you if you're working in radio and you're not, the days you have off, stay away from radio, do something else. Did you stay away from TV on your days off? I mean, did you try to stay away from Sports Center?
Yes. I mean, I don't think I stayed away from Sports Center, but, after working at ESPN, I hate college sports because it's so weird. Saturdays were the worst. Because I was doing work for we had ESPN News at the time, and I'd have to run up and down the stairs for like 8 straight hours. I never ate lunch. It was a grind, and I do not like college sports to this day. And I blame ESPN, my time at ESPN for that. Thank God I still love baseball, but yeah, I mean, it is a grind. And when I had my days off, I stayed away from all of it. I did not have anything to do with any like sports as far as, watching sports shows or ESPN. You really need to cherish those days off that you had. They were special. And, so.
And, one of the biggest running jokes with Rich Eisen over the years is, especially when he was at ESPN, he would never admit that he was a Yankees fan. He was very good about never saying it, but everybody knew it. I mean, did you know he was a Yankees fan right away, or was he good at hiding that?
It's funny that you say that because they did hide if they had an allegiance to the team for the most part. Linda Cohn is a huge Mets fan and a huge Rangers fan.
Yeah.
And everyone knew that around the studio, but she had to seem impartial because she did a lot of work on hockey. I didn't really know a lot of the guys' sports allegiance because of what you're saying. Like they didn't really talk about that because, they had to seem like every team was their favorite team because you don't want to show favoritism. Right. But I think every now and again, like Chris Berman loved the San Francisco Giants. He's a huge Willie Mays fan. So I remember that San Francisco was his favorite. But I would say for the most part, I did not know Rich Eisen was a Yankees fan. You just told me now. I had no idea. I didn't know. Yeah.
Well, he finally admitted it when he went to the NFL Network. So, I mean, he has not denied it now. But I can remember him being on Joe Beningo, who was an overnight host at WFAN. And Joe would always try to get him to admit it. He never would. But finally, when he went to the NFL Network, he did. But it was just funny because, you always knew it. But until he said it, you weren't totally sure. Kerri, one person I wanted to bring up, we talked about a lot of the people at ESPN, but one person who I really believe was very big at ESPN Sports Center in general was Robin Roberts. And, to me, she was just a tremendous, she, paved a lot of ways for so many female reporters and stuff. And, when you see people like Susan Waldman on here and stuff like that, I think Robin Roberts deserves a lot of the credit for that. Just talk about her a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. And I remember when I first met her, I went out of my way to make sure I introduced myself to her because I was a huge fan. I mean, not just because she's a woman. I mean, she is just a true professional. She knows her stuff. And she's a great role model for women, anybody who wants to get into broadcasting. But I do remember the time I went up to her and I just was like, I was like a little fan. I was like, oh my God, it's so nice to meet you. I think you're amazing. And thanks for all you're doing for women in sportscasting. So that was really a cool to meet her. And she was lovely. And she was very professional. And I enjoyed my time working with her on the 6 o'clock Sports Center. I mean, speaking of just amazing sportscasters, and now she's with ABC. So I mean, she's a star, and I think they
Oh
knew
yeah,
that back then.
definitely.
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
and the thing with Robin Roberts and Stuart Scott and Craig Sager is they all had they had stuff going on in their personal lives. They were battling cancer, all three of them. But that's the amazing part about what people in your industry do, and it happens everywhere, but especially there, is they never missed a day of work. They always came to work. They always did what they had to do. And I mean, here they are battling these very tough illnesses, and to come to work all the time and do the job the way they did, to me, that was very remarkable.
Yeah, they're professionals, and they're really good at what they do. And I think they always probably felt like, their fans always wanted to see them, and they probably didn't want to disappoint anyone. And they're courageous. They're very brave people.
Yeah.
And I mean, you admire people like that are so strong and are able to do their job and battle such a horrible disease. So I think Stuart Scott was going to keep going as long as he could, and he did.
Yeah.
And he still did SportsCenter, and he was so courageous, and I mean, there's not enough you can say about him. Same thing with Robin Roberts and Craig Stager. I mean, they love what they do, and I think that being around that made their life normal. I think anybody that's fighting something, if they can go to their job, it's like it creates some normalcy in their life and some consistency, and they're
Right.
loved. People love them and are rooting for them. So
Right. So now, Kerri, if working for ESPN wasn't stressful enough in 2004, to me, you worked for the most stressful company in the world, because let's be honest, WWE, watching that growing up, as you get older, you really see just how the genius that Vince McMahon is. And I don't know him personally. I know some people love him, some people hate him, but I'll tell you what, he does not fool around. He wants everything done right. And you talk about having to come to work early. I mean, his talent always had to come, 8 hours early before the event ever started. And I mean, his writers, his producers, everything is on the ball. So let's get into that career, and let's talk about that a little bit. First off, give me, what was it like working for Vince McMahon?
Oh my God. Do you have like 5 hours? Do we have 5 hours to talk about? Oh my God. WWE. So I watched when I was a kid, WWF.
Yeah,
And
me too.
my brother and my dad would put us in front of the TV, and we watch, the show. And I loved Hulk Hogan and Macho Man, and,
Yeah.
And loved wrestling. And then I got away from wrestling and started watching, more mainstream like baseball and football. So there was a job opening at WWE, and I was living in Fairfield at the time, and it was for an associate writer producer. So I went in for the interview, having no clue who anybody was at this point at 2004. I hadn't watched. So I got the job there, and
Yeah.
wow, what a 9-year ride that was. I got to work with some of the most creative people in the business, hardworking people. I mean, we worked till midnight. We worked all day. We ran around all day. It was another sort of live television again situation. And I worked with all the superstars, which was really cool to work with all the guys up close, John Cena, Triple H,
Yeah.
Randy Orton, Edge, Chris Jericho, to be able
Kurt
to,
Angle. Yeah.
oh God, yeah, to be able
Yeah.
to produce them, and to be able to, work with them. And, that was a small part of my job. Most of my time was spent in the studio producing promos for Raw and SmackDown and all the pay-per-views and WrestleMania. So my job was based in the studio, but every now and again I'd get to go out to a shoot. And I actually worked on the shoot when we did This Is a Hollywood. We did Hollywood spoofs of some famous movies for WrestleMania one year.
Right.
I did the one with Stone Cold Steve Austin. So we went out to LA and reenacted a scene from Gladiator, the movie with Russell Crowe. And Steve Austin played the Russell Crowe part, and it was fantastic. Yeah. So that was a really cool, and I was able to do a lot of work with Stone Cold, kind of, following him around for the day, like a day in the life. And I also did some work with Ric Flair. He had a book, and I got to work with him. They were all awesome. I liked all of them. I mean, I know everyone has stories probably. But my interactions with them were always positive. And I mean, I worked with Eddie Guerrero, he passed away,
Yeah.
unfortunately, but what a great guy. And Rey Mysterio, we took a picture. He was like up to my hip. He's so little.
Yeah.
And Undertaker, it was so cool to meet the Undertaker and work with him.
Right.
But that job was also very wild, very, high stress. Um, it was very rewarding at times, but it was, it's just a lot. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And, Vince McMahon, I didn't work directly with him, but he was in charge of everything. So promos, he would look at our promos and, so he was looking at my work and, he did like a lot of stuff that I did, which was really cool. I had sent you a Buried Alive promo that
Yeah.
he loved that promo. I mean, that promo got me, I believe it got me promoted there. I'm convinced that specific promo got me promoted to a producer position. But wow, what a team, what a bunch of people. It's really interesting because wrestling's like, I'd say it's like an adult soap opera for men,
Yes. Yeah.
much, but the women are really into it now. And, what a production. I mean, the entertainment value, if you go to a live show, is sick. I mean, it is just amazing. All the hard work people put in. It's just crazy.
Yeah. And you know what I find really remarkable about these athletes is they really are tremendous athletes because I'll give you a good example of the Royal Rumble event. I mean, they have it set up where they don't want you to just get thrown over the top rope and you're done. You have to have a science to it when you get thrown over the top rope. It has to look good because you have to make the other person look good. You have to make it look, dramatic. And all these guys get their timings right. It is amazing to me just how, phenomenal they are at what they do because the way they get pinned, they make the pin look dramatic. I mean, it's just amazing how these guys work and the type of work they do because they are phenomenal athletes.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Mike, because when I told people that I work for WWE, they're like, "Oh, it's fake. It's fake. It's fake." And it's like the storylines are scripted. They have a storyline, all these character or superstars, sorry, it's embedded.
Yeah.
The superstars, they are athletes. They train, they work out,
Yeah.
because you can get seriously hurt if you're not an athlete and if you don't take this seriously. And these guys fly off the top rope and the headbutts and the body slams, and
Yeah.
they are phenomenal athletes. They are phenomenal performers, and they take it super seriously. And they have to make sure that, they're there with each other so that no one gets hurt. And so they definitely work with each other to make sure that they get the timings right. Because your timing's wrong, you're going to break your neck, you're going to break an arm. So
Right.
they are tremendous athletes. And yes, maybe the stories they're scripted, but as far as I'm concerned, wrestling is not fake. It is real.
No.
There are real men and women out there putting their bodies on the line every night to entertain, and they're phenomenal as far as I'm concerned.
Right. And I mean, just like I said, the moves they do, if you don't, number one, the person who's doing the move has to protect his opponent, but the opponent has to sell it right, do it right, or they both get hurt. So, I mean, everything has to be right. And I mean, we've seen a couple instances, you talked about Stone Cold before. He, broke his neck a few years back. It was a botch pile driver move. So, I mean, and then, of course, Darren Drazik, I think Draz, his nickname was, he got paralyzed on a botch move. So, I mean, these people, it's definitely not fake. You can go into that ring every night knowing that you might get hurt, that something could happen. So it's like you said, it's scripted, but these guys are really putting their bodies on the line.
Yeah, they love what they do too. I mean, they are so committed to what they're doing, and I would see it firsthand, just how committed they are. And even when they're just cutting a promo on the mic and they're not actually wrestling, I mean, they're really, it's their livelihood, it's their career, and they take it seriously, like to entertain the fans. And I think WWE does an amazing job in entertaining its audience, and just wonderful. I mean, top notch. Like there's no one else that does it like them in the business.
Right. Kerri, I was thinking, you had said you were there from 2004, I think, to 2013. So I was thinking of some of the promos over the years, and I could think of when Bret Hart returned in 2010 and they built that promo up and storyline up with him and Vince McMahon, I could think of The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels having those two classic WrestleMania matches. I mean, did you work on any of that stuff during that time? So
Yes.
just talk about that a little bit, because I mean, you're talking about Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Mark Calloway, The Undertaker. These guys were legendary guys in the business, and I mean, you got to work with these guys. Just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, when they would come back and we'd have these these special matches, I was writing and producing promos for either their pay-per-view matches or when they were on Raw or SmackDown. So I was constantly involved in all the major storylines. And we had a lot of them for the 9 years I was there. There was a lot of guys always coming and going. I mean, someone would leave and then they'd end up coming back. And, so we'd always have to promote that. And a lot of times, it would happen. Sometimes we didn't even know it was going to happen. And I'd be watching Raw and someone would come back and be like, oh my God. And the next day I'd have to promote the fact that they're back and everything. And I had no idea that it was happening because a lot of the storylines were kept, top secret. And so, yeah, I mean, we'd have quick turnarounds the next day to kind of, show Shawn Michaels and show, Bret Hart, and The Undertaker used to come and go all the time. He was like gone and then he's back again. And, Ed would go and come back. And so, yeah, I was involved very much in writing and producing their promos to get people, psyched up for their pay-per-view matches and the fact they'd be on maybe Raw the following week. So I did that, that was my life every day is promotions for the top stars, the top superstars.
Right. You talked about The Undertaker, and, I'm not talking about performer, wrestler, or anything like that, but in my opinion, the greatest character that was ever invented was the Undertaker character, because Mark played that so well. And I mean, when he would come out and, you said he would kept leaving and coming back, but I think that was a good job by WWE, because you want him on you don't want to have him in your face all the time, because it's so much better when he reappears after a month or two. That's what makes his character work. But to me, that's the greatest character that they've ever produced, in my opinion.
Yeah, amazing. Absolutely. I thought The Undertaker is just, a wonderful superstar. I also, of course, I'm partial to the Macho Man. I mean, I love Macho Man.
Oh yeah, well, yeah.
I love the character, like the guys back then, like the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov.
Yeah.
I mean, that I used to watch that Big John Studd and Andre the Giant.
And I remember being scared of those guys. Like not that they were mean guys, but like they just, they were bad guys. So you knew, and the Macho Man especially. I mean, you want to talk about a guy who played the part and played the character so well. He was a face, he was awesome, and when he was a heel, he was unbelievable, because he really made you hate him. And it, with him and Miss Elizabeth, I mean, just the way he did stuff. And boy, could that guy work. I mean, that guy was a phenomenal talent. That match with the Ultimate Warrior that he had, that career-ending match, to me was one of the greatest matches. And of course, the one with Ricky Steamboat that everybody talks about. Those were just two great matches, and that's a credit to his work.
Yeah, he was like my favorite. I'll never forget him. I mean, I loved all of those guys. That was my era, like Brutus the Barber Beefcake and Greg Valentine. And, those are the guys that like I just remember. But it's funny because I remember, they're the heels and the baby faces, and that was like terminology I never heard of before I worked at WWE.
Just but good guys or bad guys.
Yeah, it's a good, so it's like you're either a heel or a baby face. And the funny thing is, a lot of the guys loved when they had to turn heel. So if like some guy, and they would always go back and forth between being baby faces and heels. And so some of the guys like being heels, like CM Punk was a baby face for the longest time, and then he would turn heel. Yeah. And I think sometimes it was more enjoyable for them to kind of play this other role that you wouldn't expect. I think it was for them as superstars a challenge. I would find that, we talk about that sometimes, we'd be like, oh, they enjoy being a heel sometimes more than a baby face. So
yeah, and what I find interesting is, I loved Hulk Hogan too, especially in the 80s. But if you go back and watch his stuff in the 80s, he really was a heel when you think about it. He really was like, kind of, hugging Miss Elizabeth all the time, and I could see why the Macho Man got jealous. He was kind of rude to Mr. Wonderful, so you don't really see it. But when you're a kid, But when you get older, you could be like, wait a minute, Hulk was a little more of a heel than we think.
Right. He would have been my favorite, because when he ripped the shirt off, he'd rip the Hulkamania and he would do those promos.
Yeah.
His promos were so strong. And I remember as a kid, they resonated with me. And I still, to this day now, like we're talking right now, and I remember this like it was yesterday, just watching him and my favorites in the 80s.
Well, that real American music, when he would come out to that, I mean, there was nothing like it, Right. And I mean, like you said, that charisma he had, he was just the best, So let me ask you this, Kerri. I believe you left WWE in 2013, and you're currently at was it AMC Networks?
Yes.
So talk about that a little bit, and why the decision to leave WWE? Did you just need a change at that point?
Yeah, I mean, after a while, I kind of needed a little bit of a change, and now I'm in reality television. I work for WeTV, and we're part of AMC Networks, which is like Mad Men, Breaking Bad, Walking Dead. I am now in reality television, and WeTV used to stand for Women's Entertainment. So when I was looking for jobs, I thought, no way are they going to take me. I'm a sports background, and I come from WWE.
Yeah.
Well, they were rebranding at the time. I kind of got lucky, and they were turning more into just WeTV, which is basically just entertainment, no women's entertainment, just overall reality television. Right. And I knew nothing about their programming. I mean, they had shows like Kendra on Top, Kendra Wilkinson, who was in the Playboy Mansion for a while. The Braxtons, like Tony Braxton's family. They had these shows like Marriage Boot Camp. I never heard of it. And I got there, and I have the most wonderful boss in the world to this day. I've been there for 6 years now. She is amazing, and she is my mentor. And she kind of brought me in and showed me the ropes. And I started working on all the shows, felt comfortable. I have the best team there with people I work with. So I'm a senior writer producer now. I was promoted after 2 years there. And I am now like watching reality television. I'm working on all these shows I wouldn't have watched in a million years because I watch, and I love it. And I have a chance to really be super creative. My writing has been improved so much. And my everything, I'm working with production companies on different projects. I'm actually working on something right now. I came up with this idea to promote a show using stick figure animation. So we're working right now with a really cool production company in Atlanta called Creative Mammals. And they're executing that for us as we speak. That's currently what I'm working on. So I love where I am right now. I couldn't be happier. The greatest people I work with, awesome network, and I'm super happy to be there.
Right. And, AMC has really, over the years, really gotten big. I mean, they would always show the classic movies and stuff like that, but they have some of the best TV in America right now. I mean, I'll just Breaking Bad and Walking Dead or, two right there. I mean, anybody I talk to, cannot wait for Walking Dead to start, and Breaking Bad. I know so many people who will watch the episodes over and over again. And I mean, they really have evolved into one of the premier networks, in the country.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because it was a movie channel at first. And then they decided to start doing, scripted television, which has been huge. And like you said, the shows you were mentioning, and, Better Call Saul is also on there. And a girl I work with named her dog Walter White after the Breaking Bad character, which I thought.
Right.
So it is just, I mean, The Walking Dead is like the biggest thing. And I know it's going to be the last season, but the shows that AMC has put out, the scripted television shows, are phenomenal. And I work in the unscripted side, the reality television. So together, WeTV is under their umbrella. And they're doing so much great stuff with the streaming services now. There's AMC Plus, where, we're in the streaming world now, because that's where everything's headed right now. If you think about it, streaming services are where it's at.
Oh,
so, we're doing streaming and linear, and, like a double threat right there. But the programming is just is great. I think we're trailblazers in a lot of ways with the shows, Mad Men especially. And what we're doing with reality television, we have some great shows. Love After Lockup is our top show right now, which is about people who date convicts. Not
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
our number one show on WeTV right now, and there's a couple spinoffs from that, and people love it. People are just love reality television.
Right. And Carrie, reality TV is a little, I don't know much about it as far as producing it, writing it, and all that, but it's difficult because, like you said, the other stuff is scripted. This is unscripted. You can't tell people how to act, when they're not acting. So it's different. But I mean, it seems like you're really enjoying it, and probably something 5 years ago you would have never thought you'd be doing. Correct?
Absolutely not. I thought I'd be in sports my entire life. Never in a million years, if you told me I'd be doing reality television promos and writing and producing, I would not have thought that would have been possible. And then I just, you realize that writing and producing is the same no matter what you're producing, whether it's a baseball game, or marriage boot camp, a reality show.
Right.
It's pretty much the fundamentals are all the same of how to approach it. And I find it to be very interesting, and I can express myself creatively like I never have before in such a different way. And I'm given, a lot of responsibility and a lot of creative freedom. And I work with an amazing team, a supportive team, and I absolutely do love what I do. It's great.
Right. And, I'm sure when you started at ESPN, again, it was very stressful and your days were long and you were still learning. But now, like, and you're still learning because when you go to different, you know, networks and stuff like that, it's not always going to be the same. So you have to, go with the times. But I mean, it's probably not as stressful as it was when, say, you were first at ESPN in 99, 2000. You probably are just so used to doing this. It's like, everyday routine for you.
Yeah, there is nothing that compares to being a temp production assistant right out of college working for ESPN, the most intense place. I mean, as a child almost, like you're 21, but you feel like a kid when you're there.
Yeah.
That place compared from what I'm doing now to back then, it is like Shangri-La, I say, even from my time at WWE, because live television is so intense and stressful. And
Yeah.
I'm not in live television anymore now. Where everything is taped and pre-produced, so we have a little time. Whereas at ESPN, I had maybe an hour or 2 hours, not even, and I'm
Yeah.
running I was literally running from building to building, from the screening room where I was logging a game to the control room, and sweating, and it was like I was running laps, or like a
Yeah.
track meet. Same thing with WWE. I mean, we had like these tight deadlines that, I'd start cutting a promo for Monday Night Raw in the morning, or SmackDown. It was due that day. It had to get out. Here we have days to work on things. So it is
Yeah.
such a different world that I'm in right now than I was at WWE and ESPN. It was gun to your head constantly, like constantly under the gun. It was very, very fast paced. And now it's like you get to breathe a little bit.
Right.
So pretty awesome.
Right. So let me ask you this, Kerri. Obviously you're a terrific writer and stuff. Is there ever a thought to kind of write about these experiences someday? Because I mean, you got a lot you could tell, and a lot of cool stories, and definitely, it's a tremendous career. And the funny thing is I mean, you're still very young. I mean, you could work another 35, 40 years. So I mean, you're by far not done. But look at all the stuff you've done since the CSB days in 1997. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I've been very lucky. And I think some of it has to do with just the fact I'm a go-getter. And, like I said, when I was handing out VHS tapes, after we were at CSB, I just never gave up with anything. I've been discouraged. I've haven't worked at times where I've been looking for jobs. It's tough. And I think, I'm so glad I never gave up and that I continued, down this path, because I've always loved, sports, and I felt like sports and television were a good combo for me. But it's hard. I mean, it definitely, I've worked for three amazing networks. And, one day I hope to maybe work for MLB, because that's my passion, baseball.
Yeah.
And Major League Baseball, MLB network's like literally down the street from where I live. I've interviewed there a couple times. My dream would be to work in baseball if I could ever finish up my career doing that. But I mean, I just think that you have to keep going, and at times it can be discouraging and hard. But if you have a good support system, with people that you surround yourself with, you do land on your feet. And I was out of work for a little while, so I'm so grateful to be working, and I kind of feel like I hit the jackpot with where I've ended up right now.
Right. We were talking about earlier about, if you could do play by play with one person, it'd be Vince Scully. I've always said this: if I could interview somebody at ESPN, it would be Chris Berman or Dan Patrick. Probably won't happen, but that's always been a dream. But let me ask you this: if you could write an episode for one TV show that's iconic, what one TV show would you want to write an episode for?
The Office.
The Office, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised by that answer, because that's a classic show.
Yeah, it's a great show, and it's funny, and I feel like sometimes I'm not able to use my comedic side a lot with what we're doing. A lot of it's very dramatic, but I kind of think my sense of humor is my best quality, and I would love to write for it would be a comedy show. Definitely, The Office is that's a great question. I mean, your questions are fantastic, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love them. I think, The Office, that humor is so cool and so out there. I would love to be a part of, I wish I could write an episode for The Office back in its heyday.
Right. And now, if there was one we talked about Vince Scully play by play, but one sports figure, whether it's a former athlete, somebody involved in sports, just one person. See, I think a cool interview for me would be Pete Rose, because, it'd be a lot of questions, but what would be the one person you would be like, okay, could I interview him or her for about 15 or 20 minutes? Who would you take?
Well, first, let's talk about Pete Rose for a second. He belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Yes, I agree.
So the guy's 80 now, and I would hate...
Let him in. Just let him in.
Well, he belongs in there. He's the best ever. He was one of the best, the Hit King, but he belongs in there because I think it's about time, bygones be bygones. Understand what he did. Very bad, not cool. But what people are doing now is way worse than what he ever did. And I think he needs to be in the Hall of Fame. So I was just thinking about that the other day, actually, which is funny. You brought up Pete Rose. That is a really tough question. I think I would go back to someone who isn't here anymore, and I would want to interview Jackie Robinson. I can't believe what he must have gone through and how he persevered and became one of the best players to ever play the game. I mean, to me, that's more of just even a baseball story. It's more of a human story. It's very... I mean, that guy, he was awesome. I never got to watch him play, obviously, but the highlights and just the stories, I just think I have so much admiration for him and what he did for the game.
Right.
But I mean, I guess if I could interview, I mean, it's like all sports I could interview too. I guess I'd have to be Jeter. I'd love to sit down with Jeter and, talk to Derek Jeter. And just, to me, the best thing about him is just how classy and how he played the game and handled himself. They don't do that anymore. These guys don't play like that anymore.
No, then that's the thing that's changing about the game. Of course, the analytics, that drives me nuts. But I mean, there's so many things. But one thing that you made a good point about Pete Rose, guys who have done worse. The thing that I can never understand, and I know he did the cardinal sin, he bet on baseball. But I'll just use a guy like A-Rod, for example. Yeah. A-Rod got caught in 2009. He made this big apology, and he said, judge me on what I do going forward. Then in 2013, he completely lied. He got on that witness stand, and he completely lied. And yet, 2016, he's on every broadcast. He's on ESPN. He's on Fox. He's everywhere. They forgave him. I don't understand why Pete Rose is the guy, the sacrificial lamb. I'll never understand that.
I don't understand. And I want him to be in the Hall of Fame before, he's not with us any longer, because he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame for his merits on the field. Yeah, you're right. Like, he's banned from baseball, Pete Rose, whereas like someone like A-Rod, who cheated and took, steroids, is still part of the baseball family. Yeah. He hasn't been shunned. And there's a lot of guys just like him, the same thing, where they're still playing. I mean, think of the Astros and the cheating scandal. Yeah. And now you see like AJ Hinch and Alex Cora both have jobs again. So it's like they should have been banned from baseball, and they're back and they get a second chance. But someone like Pete Rose, who's 80 years old now, I can't believe he's 80 years old. Come on, that's a whole other. you
Yeah.
should do. But yeah, I've had it with people judging, who can, which sin is worse than the other. And it's like there's so much bad stuff going on. And these people are getting second chances, and Pete Rose never did. He never got a second chance. So
No, and I'll never understand it, but that's a whole different
yeah,
discussion.
it's
But
a whole different show you should have.
right. So Kerri, let me ask you this before we go. What has been, you've done this now 25 years. What has been, most rewarding to you? I mean, it could be a few things, it could be one thing, but what would you say has been most rewarding about what you do every day?
Well, I think overall, I think what's rewarding is that I am doing what I wanted to do. When I was in college, I said, this is what I want to do, and I'm doing it. And I think
Right.
that's amazing because a lot of people have dreams and goals and passions, and they just, for whatever reason, aren't able to follow them or do them. And I think for me, it's just been amazing to be able to work for three just great networks, and to learn from some of the best people in the business. I'm super grateful for all the opportunities that I've been given. And I just, I would just say the fact that I'm living my dream, which is working in television. And I didn't know if this was a possibility. I mean, people want things in life when they're younger. And for the fact that I'm doing what I want to be doing, except, obviously, if I was doing it in baseball, I wouldn't know what to do with myself, because that would be the ultimate. But the fact that I'm
Right.
working in television, the fact that I'm writing and producing is a dream come true. And so I don't think there's one specific thing that I can point out to, but I think it's just overall being lucky enough to do what I love to do.
Right. Well, Kerri, I mean, I have I have no doubt in my mind that down the road I'm going to see you in baseball somewhere. I definitely think you'll get to that network someday because you're, motivated and you're determined, and that seems to have always taken you throughout your life. But I really want to thank you for coming on. And first off, congratulations on your success, on your career, because what you are doing is just remarkable. And when I was looking at your stuff the other day, I was just in awe. And as a former classmate, I'm just very proud of you. And I really want to thank you for coming on today.
Well, thank you for thinking of me, and I'm very proud of you because this is great that you have your own show, and your questions were just great questions. And congratulations to you, because it was nice that you remembered me from class back in 1997, and I'm glad you're doing what you love to do, and that's really really great. So congrats.
Well, thank you. And I wish you the best of luck. And like I said, now I'm going to watch some of these shows, if nothing else, to see your name on the credits at the end, because I just think what you're doing is just awesome.
Well, thank you so much, and I was so happy to be on your show. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it as well. So there you have it, folks. You just heard from an extraordinary and remarkable human being. When I met Kerri in 1997, I could see right away there was something special about her. She has never disappointed, and in 25 years, you look at her career, and it's one for the ages. I mean, look at the things she's done. She has worked for ESPN, the WWE, AMC networks, and you know what? She still has more goals that she wants to set. She has this desire to be a play-by-play baseball announcer, and I know that she will let nothing stand in her way from achieving that endeavor. Kerri Kroner is the type of person that we all aspire to be. She's one of those people that goes out each and every day and says, I want to be better than the day before. That's the attitude she has, and she challenges herself all the time. She doesn't take any shortcuts. She doesn't make any excuses. She goes out there and she gets the job done, and she has been a success her entire life. They say success is not an elevator. You must climb stair by stair. Well, it's safe to say that Kerri Kroner has reached the top step. For Hometown Heroes, I'm Mike Kenichi saying good night, everyone.